Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me for this virtual town hall meeting. Um, I'm really glad that all of you are here. I know people will continue to join in the minutes ahead, but we will go ahead and get started to be respectful of everyone's time and be able to wrap this up within an hour. I always prefer to do town hall meetings. I love doing town hall meetings. I prefer to do them in person, in real life, as they say. But right now, I'm not in Texas, as everybody knows. I'm in Illinois, and that's what we're going to talk about here for the next hour. I do want to mention before we get going, we will be doing previously scheduled town hall meetings on September the 6th, and you'll be getting some information about those here in the coming days from my office. We'll be doing those in Arlington and in Grand Prairie. So, with that said, what we want to talk about tonight is what's happening in Texas and nationwide with respect to this redistricting crisis that has been unleashed over the last couple of months by President Trump and Governor Abbott. Briefly, what we'll do, I'm going to give a relatively brief overview in 20 minutes or less, hopefully, then allow plenty of time for your Q&A, and we'll wrap this up at 6 o'clock. For people who have questions, and you can enter your question at any time, please use the Zoom question feature to enter your questions at any point during the meeting, and you will be called on and can unmute to ask your question when we get to that portion of the program. Okay, so as I said, we're in a nationwide crisis right now, and it started in Texas. It started with a phone call from Donald Trump to Greg Abbott when Trump told our governor, I need you to redraw your Texas congressional map because I need 5 more seats in the U.S. Congress. And this is because Trump wants to protect himself first and foremost. That's always his primary interest. And he wants to evade accountability from a Congress that would hold him accountable. He wants to evade consequences for his actions in office. And so whether we're talking about his abuse of power, how he is enriching himself by holding the office of the presidency, whether it's the cover-up of the Epstein files, any number of other things, Donald Trump is terrified that his party, the Republican Party, would lose control of the Congress in 2026. And that is why this process started. And so Governor Abbott, instead of standing up for Texas and protecting Texans, he simply said, okay, we'll get it done. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in. So the special session started on July the 19th, and the special session was called under the pretense of some other issues, including response to the Hill Country flooding, which I'll talk more about in a minute. But the truth is, and everybody knows this, and my Republican colleagues in Austin would tell you this if they were being honest about it, the only reason Governor Abbott called a special session of the legislature is for congressional redistricting. All of the rest of the issues that he put on the agenda are simply window dressing to try to cover up the real purpose of the special session, which is to deliver a new congressional map for Donald Trump. So the legislature, when it convened in July, immediately started working on redistricting, proving that point that the only reason for this was congressional redistricting. There have been multiple hearings in the House and the Senate on redistricting. I think a total of 9 hearings between both chambers, a total of 2, maybe 3 by now on the flooding in the Hill Country and what went wrong there. So it shows where the priorities lay from the governor and the Republicans in the legislature. I was appointed to the Select Committee on Congressional Redistricting, and I was glad to be in that position to be able to help, listen to public testimony. So many of you came out to the hearing in Arlington, which was wonderful. We had a tremendous response there, but we had a tremendous response everywhere. You can see briefly there, the listed here, we had one in Austin, one in Houston, and then the one in Arlington. And importantly, as anyone who was in Arlington knows, when you came to testify, there was no map to testify on. There was no proposal to testify on. Everyone had to testify sort of on the nebulous concept of congressional redistricting. And people made their voices clear. 99% literally, and I'm not exaggerating, said we do not want any mid-decade redistricting. But after those three hearings and hearing from hundreds of people, thousands more sent comments in to the House website. The 2 days after, literally 2 days after that Arlington hearing concluded, the Republicans rolled out a map finally, and it was absolutely terrible. And then they had one hearing on that map that following Friday there at the state capitol in Austin, and voted it out. The following morning, we met all day, all night till about 2 a.m. Saturday morning, and they came back at 9 a.m. Saturday and voted out the map in a very rushed hearing process. So there was no consideration at all given to the public's considerable input and vehement opposition to this process. The Republicans simply ignored it. It turned out it was just a dog and pony show, and they had a map all along. That became evident, but they were hiding the ball. They hid the ball and didn't show the public the map until it was too late. So let's talk about the maps, and let's talk about this overall redistricting process just for a minute. And this is just illustrative, but Trump said he wanted 5 districts, and so that's what the Republicans did. But a lot of this, and this is, don't say anything else today. This is the most important point, especially important for us in Tarrant County and in Southeast Tarrant County. A lot of the pundits like to break this down as just, more partisan bickering. Republicans and Democrats are fighting again, and everyone gerrymanders maps and all that stuff. And there's been a lot of that kind of, it's all politics and that type of thing. But this goes beyond typical politics, because to do what Trump wants, what Abbott has to do, and what the Republicans in the legislature are doing, is they have to go out and specifically identify, and this is what Trump's Department of Justice told them to do, is specifically identify several majority minority congressional districts in our state and rip them apart and deny those communities the opportunity to elect the candidates of their choice. And that's what this plan does. It decimates historic majority minority congressional districts across the state, in our area, in Dallas-Fort Worth, in the Houston area, in Austin and San Antonio, and in South Texas. And that's how they achieve the goal. I believe, and I said this on the record in that before we voted on this map, as I voted against it, and said clearly this map is illegal. It is a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, full stop. And the Republicans don't care. They're trying to do it anyway. But just to give you, I won't go through every district they try to change because that would take too long. But just to give you an example specific to us in Tarrant County, Congressman Mark Vesey, who has represented Congressional District 33 since 2013, has and as you all know, has done an amazing job for us. His district was created by a federal court back in the 2012 election. And the reason it was created was the court said that the way the legislature drew the map at that time unfairly discriminated against Black and Hispanic residents of Tarrant County, Fort Worth in particular. And so the federal court ordered that district to be created to give minority voters in Tarrant County a fair opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice, a candidate who would represent their values, candidate who would be responsive to constituents' needs, and work hard on behalf of our communities in Tarrant County. So federal court said you have to have this district. So here we are, a little over a decade later. The Republicans are committing the same sin they committed back in 2011 by drawing a discriminatory map back then that a court ruled unconstitutional. They're basically doing the same thing here by cracking and packing minority communities in Tarrant County. if you look, and if you look at on the, I guess the right side of this slide, that's kind of an enlargement of Tarrant County. But if you look at, you can kind of see the loop 820 there. If you look at the southeast portion of that, that's, kind of a core part of Mark Vesey's district. You see they split that up into multiple rural-based districts that extend out hundreds of miles. And in our area, in District 101, in the southeast corner of the county, if you see that blue area there, they're packing Arlington and Grand Prairie into Congressional District 30, who has a great Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. But that is a classic way Republicans intentionally discriminate against minority voters. They crack populations between multiple districts, therefore diluting the power of those votes. And then they pack the rest of the population into an already performing district where voters already have the opportunity to elect the candidate of their choice. Taken together, those two things result in far less representation and far less impact of the collective voices of Black and Hispanic voters in our state. That's what they've done in Tarrant County. And then this repeats itself in Austin and in San Antonio and in Houston and in South Texas. That is how they're going about this. We can go to the next slide. So, as a result of all that, again, the Republicans were rushing this map through the process. As I said, the committee voted it out Saturday morning, and then they scheduled it for a vote before the full House on the following Monday. And so that was last Monday. And so House Democrats made a critical decision over that weekend, and we collectively decided that we were not going to allow this map to pass, not at this time, and we left the state. Why did we leave the state? We left the state because under the Texas Constitution, the House and the Senate must have 2/3 of its membership present in order to conduct any business. So we have 150 members in the House. There have to be at least 100 members present on the floor of the House for the House to conduct any business whatsoever. And we know that if at least 51 members don't show up, then the House can't conduct any business. Why did we leave the state? Well, the rules of the House and the Constitution provide that the House, as a legislative body, has the ability to compel a quorum. That is the House's right. And so the way that works is they send the sergeant at arms, and the sergeant at arms can work with the Department of Public Safety to go and find members who are absent and bring them to the House. It's called a warrant, but it's not a criminal warrant, it's a civil warrant. So if they found a member who was missing, they wouldn't take him to jail, they just simply take him back to the House of Representatives. But that's why we left the state, because outside the state of Texas, they have no jurisdiction to do that. And we wanted to maintain this quorum break for more than just a day or two. We wanted to maintain it long enough so that we could raise the visibility around this issue, raise awareness about what Trump and Abbott are doing in Texas and how they're doing it, how they're going about it. And we wanted to sound alarm bells coast to coast, because while this is a huge problem for our state and a clear attack on Texas voters, it impacts the entire country. It impacts 350 million Americans whose voices in the next congressional elections in 2026 and beyond could be impacted by the actions that Texas is taking through this power grab, through this attempted takeover. And so that's what we set out to do. And we have made a lot of progress. So I want to tell you about that next. So let me just briefly segue into flood relief, because I know this has been talked about a lot. So, what happened on the early morning hours of July 4th in the Texas Hill Country in Kirk County, but also in other counties, including Travis County, was absolutely devastating and horrific. More than 130 Texans, many of them very young Texans, lost their lives tragically. The state government needs to respond and needs to provide real relief to those affected communities. And further, we need to take actions to prevent similar tragedies in the future, because I think the information shows already there were some things that could have been done that were not done. That said, Governor Abbott, as the governor of Texas, has full authority by the power of his office to provide immediate relief to those affected communities. He didn't do it. He refused to do it. Why? Because he wanted instead to use this issue, which is shameful, that he wanted to use this issue as subterfuge for Trump's redistricting agenda. And that's what he's done. The reality is, in terms of funding, money, Governor Abbott has used, it's called budget execution authority. It's a term in state government. Governor has that authority, and he can simply go to a small panel of other state leaders and request funding. And he's done this multiple times. He's done it to the tune of several $billions to build a border wall on the Rio Grande Valley, in the Rio Grande River. He's used it appropriately in some emergency situations before. He should have used it here. He refused to do it, so he could use this as an issue to disguise what he's doing with respect to redistricting. And it's important that everybody understand that. Democrats want to deliver on real relief for the affected communities in the Hill Country. The person standing most in the way of that right now is Greg Abbott. And I mentioned this earlier. This is kind of an illustration of the number of hearings, the committee meetings that the legislature has had on related to the floods and the devastation in the Hill Country versus Trump's redistricting. And you can see the Republicans in the legislature have devoted far more time, far more energy, far more resources to redistricting than they have to flood relief. So, on this quorum break, as I said, we have worked to raise national awareness, to raise the alarms, to tell everyone in this country, you got to get involved in this fight. This isn't just a Texas thing. This affects the whole country. And I'm proud to report to all of you today that we've had a lot of success in doing this. This is a photograph from about 3 weeks ago when myself and Representative Romero, also from Tarrant County, Representative Collier, also from Tarrant County, was there, and a few other members of the Texas House. We traveled to Sacramento for a one-day trip. We went up and back in the same day to meet with Governor Gavin Newsom, governor of California. And we were briefing him. And this photo is when I was explaining what the redistricting process looked like as it was unfolding in Texas. And this was right between the first hearing in Austin and the second hearing in Houston. It was the day in between that we went up there. And Governor Newsom was very gracious with his time and very attentive and really took a lot of took to heart what we were saying, and he got it. He understood that look, if Texas does this, then California has to consider all its options. And it's important to know California has an independent redistricting commission, which Governor Newsom supports. I wish we had that process nationwide. Democrats in Congress have tried to pass that. Republicans have blocked it. So we don't have it nationwide yet. They do have it in California. But Governor Newsom has correctly decided that California just can't, just because it has this good government mechanism, it can't unilaterally disarm and say, well, we have a different set of rules than what Donald Trump and Greg Abbott play by. That's how Republicans want us to react. but Governor Newsom, to his credit, is not doing that. And so earlier today, just about 4 hours ago, Governor Newsom held a press conference in Los Angeles where they announced a ballot initiative that they'll be taking to the voters of California this November to temporarily pass a new redistricting plan just for the rest of this decade. They'll leave their commission intact for the next regular redistricting in 2031, but they will pass a temporary map with the voters' approval. And it is contingent upon Texas actually following through with our ill-advised mid-decade redistricting. If Donald Trump calls Greg Abbott tomorrow and says, Greg, you know what, forget it, it was a bad idea, and Abbott stands down, then the thing in California won't go forward. But if Texas goes forward, if Greg Abbott goes forward, then California is going to respond. And I'm very, very pleased that our meeting with the governor a couple of weeks ago, and more importantly, the collective work of more than 50 House Democrats over this last 10, 12 days has really elevated this issue to put California in a good position to do this. We've also sent delegations to New York. We've met with people here in Illinois, and we're continuing to raise that awareness. But this is a huge win to, at the very least, neutralize what may eventually happen in Texas. So we're about to move to questions and answers. That is a summary of what's happened so far. I want to hear your questions. I do want to note this. There are rallies happening across the country on Saturday. And this is something else we're really excited about, that this quorum break has spurred a national movement. And there's going to be over 100 rallies across the country on Saturday. I expect to be at the one in Chicago, near where we are right now. And there is one in Austin, naturally, at the state capitol. And so if anyone would like to participate in that, there are buses that are leaving from our area in the DFW area, and you can sign up here. My team made a nifty little QR code that you can take advantage of to sign up if you're interested in going to the rally, the Stop the Trump Takeover rally in Austin this Saturday. So take advantage of that if you are interested. So we will move to questions.
Okay, so when we go with questions, I will call your name when your question is up, and then we will give you the option to go ahead and unmute so you can ask Representative Turner your question. So we're going to start with Stanley Johnson. Stanley Johnson, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Why isn't gerrymandering illegal? Why are term limits mandatory nationwide?
Great questions. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Appreciate you being with us today. And if my team is able, I think we can probably drop the slide deck for now, if it's possible. So, Mr. Johnson, why isn't gerrymandering illegal? Is a great question. Gerrymandering is about as old as the United States and has been around a long time. And the name, little history of trivia, there was a guy named, Jerry, it was governor of Massachusetts. That's named after. But there was a district that they drew in Massachusetts that looked like a salamander. And his first name was Jerry. And so that's where the name gerrymander came from. And a lot of us have tried to approach the problem of gerrymandering in different ways. There are two main types of gerrymandering that are really pervasive in American politics right now. One is partisan gerrymandering. And so that's what the Republicans in Austin claim that they're doing right now. They're simply doing partisan gerrymandering. That's basically is a legal defense for them. Unfortunately, the U.S. Supreme Court has essentially ruled that partisan gerrymandering, drawing districts for the purposes of partisan gain for one party or the other, is not illegal. is not unconstitutional. So the Supreme Court has basically said, you can do it. And so that's why some states, such as California and several others, have adopted these independent commissions to try to take the partisan gerrymandering process out of the equation. And in California, it has worked. In other states, it has worked. Unfortunately, it's not a nationwide standard. So that's why you have a situation where some states are able to do things that other states don't allow themselves to do. And that creates this unlevel playing field nationwide. But the part of the gerrymandering that is unquestionably illegal and unconstitutional and violates the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is racial gerrymandering, is what I was describing earlier, intentionally discriminating against minority voters, cracking and packing minority communities in order to dilute the voting stream. That is illegal. That is racial gerrymandering. That is being intentionally discriminatory in how you're drawing the maps. That is illegal. And so while what's happening in Texas right now, the Republicans, as their legal defense, will say, we're gerrymandering, but we're just partisan gerrymandering. We're just trying to elect more Republicans. What they're doing is illegal racial gerrymandering, which is against the law. So the answer to your question, though, to solve the problem is we need to pass. There's a bill in Congress that has been unable to pass so far, but I'm hopeful it will someday. It's called the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So it is an expanded version of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. And it would do a lot of things, including restore protections for states like Texas that the Supreme Court has undone over the years. But it would also mandate independent, nonpartisan redistricting commissions nationwide. So we would have an even playing field across the country, and that's ultimately what should happen. With respect to term limits, legislative offices in Texas and nationally, there are no term limits and really in Texas there was also no term limits for executive branch offices, which is why Governor Abbott is running for a fourth term as governor right now. So term limits right now, obviously the president's limited to 2 4-year terms. Some states have term limits on their state legislators. Texas does not. And, cities and school districts in some cases in Texas also have term limits. That's generally a local decision at that level. But there are no term limits either for the U.S. Congress or for the Texas legislature. Next question. Thank you for the question, sir.
All right, next we're going to go to Joshua Williams. Joshua, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Hello, you can't. Am I being read? Sweet.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just had a question about if Abbott were to call a special session, which it might happen, most likely. Would you guys break quorum again in that case to stop the redistricting maps from going through?
Great question, Joshua. Thank you. Well, look, we fully expect Governor Abbott to call a second special session. In fact, he's already announced that he's going to call it on Friday as soon as this one adjourns. They're going to adjourn this one a few days early because we're not coming back for the end of this one. And he's already said he'll convene a new one that same day. We have always said, from the time we left nearly 2 weeks ago, that this was our goal, was to kill this first special session and use that time productively to raise awareness of this issue nationwide. But we've always known that Abbott will call another special session. He'll call as many as it takes to get to do what Donald Trump wants him to do. When Trump says you got to do something, Republicans say yes, sir. And so we've never been, under any illusion that outlast their desire and willingness to get this done. So what we have decided is, we set out some clear goals: kill this first special session, raise national awareness of the issue, and prompt another state to respond to, at the very least, neutralize what may happen in Texas. And with the announcement today in California and the map that it will be coming, we believe, in the next few days, and California will convene its special session or next session starting on Monday. And we believe we have accomplished our goals. And for us in Texas, what's important next is that these maps that they're going to pass get into the federal courts as quickly as possible. Because as I said, I believe they're unconstitutional. I believe they're a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So this battle in Texas is going to move into the federal courts once the maps pass, and then nationally, the battle is going to continue in California with their referendum in November. So, we've never in any way suggested we would, stay out beyond the end of this regular special, this first special session, I should say. And it's one of those things where if they keep calling special sessions, there comes a point where it's not practical to keep doing this. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, next we're going to go to Michelle Davis. Michelle, you had a few questions, so you can go ahead and pick which one you would like to ask.
Hey, Michelle.
Okay. Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Good. Okay. So looking at these maps that they drawn, so they use them based on the 2020 census and the 2024 election turnout. But as we know, here in Texas, Democrats did not really turn out in the 2024 election. So when you put that same data and compare it with the 2018 Senate election, Democrats would make gains. So with the maps that they have drawn, is it possible, or do we have a possible dummy mander on our hands?
Well, great question, Michelle. Thank you. So the answer is yes, possibly. I will say that you are absolutely right, and you make a very important point that I did not mention earlier. We do redistricting every 10 years because we have a new census every 10 years, and people move away, people move in, people are born, people pass away. And the Constitution requires the districts be equalized in population, and that helps to adhere to the principle of one person, one vote, which is a key principle in our democracy. And that's the reason for redistricting fundamentally. And so the Republicans in Texas are drawing new districts based on census data that's 5 years old. They don't have any new data to draw it on, new census data. You're right, they're looking at election data for sure, but they don't have any new census data to base this on. And you're right, just from a partisan perspective, Democratic turnout was not certainly not what I wanted it to be in 2024. And that was the case all across the country, unfortunately, in 2024. And you are right, if you go back to 2018, the 2018 election, and look at the results in some of those races, particularly like the U.S. Senate race as an example, these new congressional districts do indeed look more competitive. So I think that's quite possible. And if you look at historically, that the president's party tends to lose seats in a midterm election. Certainly that was the case in Trump's midterm election in 2018, his first midterm, and this will be his second. And so yeah, I agree. Republicans shouldn't be super confident they're going to run the table on these maps. But that said, these maps are still discriminatory, and they still reduce the voting power and the voices of minority Texans, and that is the reason we are fighting so hard against them.
Awesome. Okay. Next we're going to have Catherine O'Leary. Catherine, you can go ahead and unmute your mic and ask your question.
Okay. My question is there a way for us to put petitions together. I know the state law doesn't allow it to fix this problem where the people can put petitions to put on the ballot. We have very often the laws that are being passed right now are not, they should be voted by the people. Our gun laws, our voting laws, our women's rights, all of that should be voted on by the women or the men or everybody, just in general. So is there a way to fix this? Because I know that Florida is in the process of doing the same thing, which is taking your rights away and only allowing their state house to make those decisions. I know Missouri is trying to take the women's rights away after it was voted locally by the state.
Thank you, Ms. Larry. That's a great question. Unfortunately, the Texas law and the Texas Constitution do not allow and do not provide for any kind of initiative and referendum process. So there is not a process in Texas that provides for citizen petitions to get a measure on the ballot for approval. And I'm imagining your next question would be how do we change that? That change would have to be a constitutional amendment to the Texas Constitution, which requires a 2/3 vote in the House and a 2/3 vote in the Senate. And then that change would have to then be approved by the voters to take effect, to become part of the Constitution and take effect. So it's a big hill to climb. And certainly I think you are right. Like if we put a ballot initiative on the ballot, like if we had that process and we put a ballot initiative, up to the people to decide on creating a nonpartisan redistricting commission, it would pass. If we put a proposition forward to say we want to protect women's health care and legalize abortion again in the state of Texas, it would pass. We want to expand Medicaid to see that we're not last in the nation in the number of uninsured, it would pass, and a number of other things. But for those reasons, we got to change the legislature first, because the Republicans are never going to do that, because all those things would pass. So the answer is unfortunately no. And we want to change those policies, change those laws. We have to change who the governor is, who the lieutenant governor is, and who's sitting in the House and the Senate in Austin. And that's the quickest way and most direct way we can change those policies, and we need to change them because it is hurting people across our state.
And the next question we have is from Cheryl Smith. Cheryl, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, Chris. Thank you so much for doing all that you do. My concern is, since we've already gotten the Tarrant County Commissioners Court immediate approval, I'm concerned about, maybe you could explain to me better. Now we have the Texas piece coming as well. How is that going to affect me? Like we all moved from precinct 2 to precinct 1. I'm a little confused about that process. And when the elections come in, the constitutional amendments and midterms, how are we going to be? Where are we going to be? Or is it still not clear? Because I know they changed our precinct numbers from 2 to 1.
Yeah, great question, Cheryl, and thank you for all you do in our community. Let me try to answer that. So I have not talked about the Tarrant County redistricting today, but an equally flawed and equally discriminatory process that we saw unfold, right in our own Tarrant County courthouse when our county judge Tim O'Hare and the Republicans on the commissioners court drew a new commissioners map, basically targeting Commissioner Precinct 2, represented by my friend Elisa Simmons, who's done a great job for our community to try to run her out of office. And in so doing, they are, again, classic cracking and packing. They are packing Black and Hispanic voters across Tarrant County basically into one commissioner precinct, Precinct 1. It's a Fort Worth-based jurisdiction. And so Cheryl is right. As a result of that, she's now in Precinct 1. Lisa and I live in Precinct 1 now. And so that automatically causes our precinct numbers to change, because in Tarrant County, the first number of your 4-digit precinct number corresponds to the commissioner precinct you live in. So we live in 2,000 something before, now we live in 1,000 something precincts. So that creates a level of confusion as well. With congressional redistricting, I will say it is nothing obviously has passed yet, and this will certainly go to the court. So it's going to be a while till we know what the outcome is on congressional redistricting in Texas. But to Cheryl's point, anytime you do congressional redistricting is redone, invariably precincts get split in half or in multiple ways, and that automatically forces counties to redraw precincts or create new precincts or consolidate precincts, and so that will also cause some level of confusion. I will say, as I mentioned earlier, under this proposed Republican map, virtually all of House District 101, so going from the Dallas County line west out to Cooper Street, south of I-20 and some north of I-20 as well, is going to be moved into Congressional District 30, which is represented by Congresswoman Crockett. So that's what we know based on what we've seen so far. As I say, a long way to go because we're breaking quorum. Neither this map has not passed in the House, and it did pass in the Senate this week, but they'll have to do it again because this session is going to expire here very soon. But once it passes in the legislature, then it will go to the courts for them to take a look at it. And I believe, again, these maps are a violation of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I also think the commissioner's map is a violation of the Voting Rights Act and the Constitution. And that commissioner's map also is subject to a federal lawsuit that has been filed. It's pending in a federal court in Fort Worth. So hopefully we'll hear something from that court soon on the Tarrant County Commissioner's map as well. But that's where all of that stands right now.
Okay, the next question is from someone watching on YouTube. Susan Reed asked, "Isn't our country healthier when there isn't one political party running our state?"
Well, Susan, I certainly think so. That's a great question. I think that we've had one party rule in Texas for over 20 years. The Republicans have controlled the House, the Senate, and every statewide office. They've controlled all of that since 2002. And I don't think it's been good for our state. You look at the fact that we're last in the nation when it comes to people with health insurance. We're 40 something in the nation when it comes to classroom funding in our public schools. You look at our gun violence crisis, the lack of access to women's health care, including abortion access. You look at our maternal mortality rate, any environmental issues, any number of other things. I don't think one party rule has been good at all. And it is, I don't think it's ever been good, but it has gotten so much worse in the last few years, thanks to Donald Trump. Because when I first got to the legislature, before Trump was on the scene, there were some things Republicans and Democrats could work together on. But since Trump has been president and been the leader of the Republican Party, it is increasingly hard for Republicans to break away from their party line and from what Trump says. And that's why Republicans in the House passed a voucher bill this last session. We'd always had bipartisan opposition to private school vouchers in Texas, but Trump got involved, made a phone call. They all fell in line. And the same thing with this redistricting. There was a time when a Texas governor would just tell a president, even if a president of their own party, don't mess with Texas. No, we're not going to do that. But Abbott's too weak to do that. And so yeah, I think one party rule is bad. It's been bad for us in Texas for sure. And I think it has gotten a lot worse when this current Republican Party is basically behaving like a cult, and Donald Trump is the cult leader.
Okay, the next question will be Jim Balsam. Jim, you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Representative Turner, for holding this meeting. It's been very informative. We really appreciate your time. My question is related to what happens next when Texas passes these awful maps and it goes through litigation and eventually possibly reaches the Supreme Court. Given the current makeup of the Supreme Court today, what's been the discussion among your colleagues about the likelihood of the Supreme Court actually overturning what Texas does and finding it unconstitutional or a violation of the Voting Rights Act? And I guess similarly, if California is successful in their redistricting to negate the change made by Texas, what's the likelihood that the current Supreme Court will actually uphold or overturn that result either?
Great, Jim. Great questions. Thank you for that. So we have talked about that a lot, and there's been a lot of debate about, what happens when this eventually goes to court, because we certainly have all seen a real shift in the U.S. Supreme Court in the last few years. Really since Trump's first term, when he got 3 justices confirmed, and there have been a lot of decisions since then that I certainly disagree with, most notably the Dobbs decision that overturned Roe v. Wade. That said, while I share those concerns, it's important to note that the Supreme Court, this current composition of the Supreme Court, has had voting rights cases before it in the last couple of years, and they have still stopped short of there's different sections of the Voting Rights Act, but Section 2 is the important section for purposes of what we're talking about today in terms of intentional discrimination in redistricting plans. And so they have stopped short of eroding those protections further. And so there are at least in recent decisions, as I understand, there's at least 5 justices there who are not willing to try to overturn the Voting Rights Act so far. Now, every case is different, and every case brings new opportunities and new risks. There's no doubt about that. Procedurally, it's this would go back to a 3-judge panel that is based in El Paso. So, and I didn't talk about all this for purposes of time, but just briefly, and this is actually important, for everyone to know, as bad as this plan is, the fact is, our current congressional maps in Texas and our state Senate map and our state House map are also heavily gerrymandered, and I believe, and many others believe, are racially gerrymandered and racially discriminatory in violation of the Voting Rights Act. And those maps drawn in 2021 that we're currently under are the subject of a voting rights lawsuit that has been consolidated into a federal court in El Paso. It's a 3-judge panel that hears these cases. And the trial actually on those 2021 maps, House, Senate, and Congress, concluded just this June. And a decision is pending from that 3-judge panel on these maps, on the current maps. When this new congressional map does pass, I expect that voting rights organizations and lawyers will bring suit on this map in that court, and they'll have a lot to look at very, very, very quickly before the 2026 election cycle begins. But there's a lot of possibilities there. One possibility is the court may say, we don't think this map should go into effect yet. And so it could be a decision of a lower court, not necessarily the U.S. Supreme Court. But your point's well taken, that the courts have changed a lot, and protections that we could count on under federal law and in the court rulings in past decades, we cannot take for granted anymore. And that's true, frankly, of all of our rights and freedoms as Americans, because the Trump administration and his billionaire donors and allies are working feverishly to erode a lot of those protections. With respect to what they would do with California, I couldn't speculate, but again, I point out the Supreme Court has ruled that partisan gerrymandering is fine under the Constitution. I don't like it, but they have ruled that it's constitutional to do it. And I would add that California has a record of drawing maps that do comply with the Voting Rights Act and do comply with the Constitution. So whenever they move forward with a map, I expect, based on their track record, it will also comply and meet all the legal tests.
Okay, next we have Nellie. Nellie, if you want to unmute your microphone, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I wanted to ask for the fact that I feel like a lot of the voter apathy, definitely in Texas, stems from the fact that, um, obviously due to this gerrymandering as well, is that a lot of Democrats don't actually know that Texas is more than just a red state. It's actually more purple, but we're just so badly gerrymandered, we look red. Because when you look on the Independent Voter Project, it actually has the stats for registered voters. And there are more Democrats registered in the state of Texas than Republicans. So it's really a matter of voter turnout, why it seems like we can't ever get ahead in any elections. Is there a way that we could, like, blast out to the people or just let the people know, hey, there are more of us than there are of them. If you come out and vote, your vote actually does matter, and we could actually get some things really changed around here. Is there a way?
Well, Nelly, thank you for the question, and you hit the nail on the head. You're right. The people are there. The voters, the potential voters, are there in Texas, and this current situation does not have to be our permanent destiny, and doesn't have to be our future. We can change it. We have the power to change who represents us and who is elected to lead us in Texas and who's elected to represent us in our nation's capital. You're absolutely right about that. And to your point, while Republicans have had a lot of success, certainly over the last couple of decades in winning statewide office, right now they're winning between 55% of the vote on average in a statewide election. But, in the current congressional map, they've got over 60% of the seats. In the proposed congressional map, they'd have over 70% of the seats. So it's nowhere near proportionate even to those statewide election results. But you are right that there are a lot of young Texans. Texas is a majority minority state now. Hispanics are a plurality in our state. And so we have all the ingredients there to make Texas truly a purple state, as you say, to where Democrats can have the ability to compete with a real chance of winning statewide and winning more races at the legislative and congressional level. But we have to get more people engaged, and we have to give people a reason to get out and vote. We talked earlier, Michelle asked, in her question, alluded to the 2024 election. And look, whatever, and this was a nationwide problem. Again, it wasn't specific to Texas. But, a lot of Democrats just stayed home. Well, a lot of Democratic voters who had voted in 2020 for President Biden, didn't come back out in 2024. And that obviously hurt us in that election across the country, including in Texas. And so we've got to, as a party and as candidates in our party, and I'll include myself in this, we all have to ask ourselves, what more can we do to make sure we get people engaged and turn out to vote? And that's how we change things. That's how we turn it around. There's not a magic answer, because if there was, I don't know what it is. If there was, I would have put it to work years ago. But it takes a lot of hard work. I think it takes listening to people and understanding what people want to hear, what they want their elected leaders talking about, what they want their elected leaders addressing, the problems they want to solve. Fundamentally, we got to talk to people about, things that impact their lives. I think, people I talk to in House District 101, they don't want government to solve every problem for them. But they do expect and have a right to expect, I think, that they'll have good schools to send their kids to. They can have affordable, good quality healthcare when they need it. And they can live in a safe community, and they can have a job, and their families can have jobs that help them not just survive but get ahead, and have part of the American dream. And so I think Democrats in Texas and everywhere, have to hone in on those core priorities that I think the vast majority of the American people share. And we got to talk about how we're going to create more opportunity for Texans and for Americans, how we're going to unlock more opportunity for them and stop these Republicans who are trying to take opportunity away and create more barriers to opportunity. That's what I think ultimately is going to result in us being successful in the long run.
Okay, and we are getting close to the end of the hour, so we're going to wrap it up with one last question. Amber Zuckerman, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask the last question.
Hi, Chris. Thank you again. Hadn't seen you in a little while. Look forward to seeing you when you're back in Texas. But given the current tone in national politics and what developments, what's giving you hope as you look ahead, both as a state leader, and then what is the most effective way that we can help you and we can be supportive to you and your colleagues who are trying to make world better for us?
Well, Amber, thank you so much, and I appreciate that question, and thank you for being here, and look forward to seeing you again back in Texas at our usual Mexican restaurant where we always run into each other. What people can do to help us and support what we're doing right now. I think a lot of people are doing it. Y'all are doing it by being on this Zoom right now with me. I've gotten your emails, your calls, your social media messages, and my colleagues have too. And it means so much to us, the words of support and the expressions of support, because this is hard. This has been a challenge for everyone to uproot and move out of state for a couple of weeks, and it helps keep people going. So it's very much appreciated. What I would say, practically speaking, going forward is everyone, I think most of you on the Zoom live in House District 101. And so, where your state representative stands on these congressional maps. I'll be voting against them and the rest of Greg Abbott's extreme agenda. But should you live somewhere else, or should you have a Republican state senator, call, email that person, let them know. And I know a lot of people say, well, that won't change their mind. Maybe not, but they need to hear from you. And they need to understand that they're voting against their district. They're voting against their constituents. They're voting against our values as Texans. They need to hear that. And I would add too, the other thing everyone can do is, I'm putting out a lot of information, trying to do it daily, sometimes multiple times a day on social media, on Facebook, on Instagram, on X. Follow us, engage with us there, share, and I'm saying us as in not just me, but my Democratic colleagues as well, because we're all doing that for the most part. Follow us and share what we're putting out there, and help us grow our reach, so we're able to tell more people about what's happening and get people involved in this fight. But as to what, and it's a great question to end on, what keeps me going? I have faith in our country. I have faith in our Constitution and the vision that our founding fathers had when they broke away from Great Britain in the late 1700s and started this bold experiment. About 2 hours ago, I was we were having a meeting with of our caucus, and we had a Zoom meeting with a very special guest. It was President Barack Obama. And President Obama spoke, very powerfully and eloquently, as he always does. and, thanked us for what we have done, and, congratulated everyone on how we have successfully raised this issue into a national issue, created a national issue that's creating real results like we're seeing in California. But he spoke of similar to when he ran for president and served as president, of his hope that for all the challenges we have in our country, all the divisions we have, all the partisanship, and sometimes the real ugly side of politics that we see now, especially out of Washington and Austin. Fundamentally, the American people are good people, and we've had challenges before in our country, and we're going to overcome this challenge too. And I still believe that we are going to come out of this as a better people and a stronger country and a stronger state. And just because things are the way they are today doesn't mean they have to stay that way. We have the power to change what's going on. And I have faith that we're going to do that. So it was great to hear President Obama's message. He encouraged us to know that we should return to the Capitol when we return to the Capitol in Austin soon. That we should feel invigorated for what we've been able to do. But I share that to say that I could not have done this, and my colleagues could not have done this without you and so many others across the state of Texas having our backs and supporting us. So thank you all for being on this call with me today. I appreciate you taking time out. There's our contact information on the screen. Please do follow us on social media, visit our website. If you need any help with a state matter, don't ever hesitate to call our office in Arlington or send us an email. We're here to help, here to serve, and hope to see you in person on September 6th when I'm hopefully back in Texas, and look forward to doing our town halls in person at that time. So thank you all very